I want to build a different future than the tomorrow I see on the horizon. What kind of man am I if I don't do everything I can to make that happen? So now I return to the machine. How do I solve everything? Today on the Comic Book Report, The Fantastic Four by Jonathan Hickman. Stick around and check it out. Greetings all, my name is Dominic and you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where I review comic books and graphic novels to give you an idea of what to read. As I mentioned at the top, today I'll be doing a review for The Fantastic Four by Jonathan Hickman. So we'll be taking a look at both omnibuses that comprise his run on the title. And these are the newest editions at the time of the recording, the 2022 reprints. Before we dive in, however, let's do a couple quick facts on today's collections. Volume 1 of The Fantastic Four by Jonathan Hickman was written primarily by Jonathan Hickman and illustrated by Dale Eaglesham, Neil Edwards, Steve Epting, Sean Chen, Nick Dragotta, and Barry Kinson. The issues collected in this volume were initially published between 2009 and 2011, and this Volume 1 contains Dark Reign, Fantastic Four, issues 1 through 5, Fantastic Four, issues 570 through 588, FF, issues 1 through 5, and materials from Dark Reign, The Cabal, one-shot, in this 800-page hardcover. Volume 2 was also written by Jonathan Hickman and illustrated primarily by Steve Epting, Nick Dragotta, Greg Toshini, Juan Babillo, Ron Garney, Ryan Stegman, and Barry Kitson. The issues in the Volume 2 omnibus were published by Marvel Comics roughly between 2011 and 2012. That volume collects FF issues 6 through 23 and Fantastic Four issues 600 through 611 and 605.1 in an 832-page hardcover. At this time, I'd like to issue a brief spoiler warning. I will be flipping through these collections as well as commenting on some of the plot points throughout. You've been warned. Okay, and here are the collections themselves. As I said, I'll be covering both of these volumes. These are both from the 2022 reprints of these omnibuses. I've been waiting for a long time for a chance to read these. I've heard it's one of the best runs of Fantastic Four, and at the time I first heard about it, these were way out of print, hundreds and hundreds of dollars, so I was so ecstatic when I heard they were reprinting, and I had to go ahead and pick these up. I should note that my Volume 1, I actually did one of the direct market covers that I just liked. My Volume 2, though, is just the standard cover. I'll continue to give you just kind of a good look at both of these real quick. I love seeing some of the under the dust jacket art. That's always such a treat I've enjoyed with these kind of last few years of hardcovers. These are omnibus editions, glossy reprinted issues that comprise his entire run. They are oversized as well, which is always a treat, especially if you enjoy the artwork like I do. And as I go ahead and make my way over to Volume 2, I should say that I first really read Jonathan Hickman when I picked up his recent Dawn of X era or House of X, Powers of 10, X-Men stuff he's done the last few years. I was vaguely aware of him before that. I knew he had a lot of buzz. I knew this run was really popular. But X-Men was really when I first sought him out for the sole purpose of reading a Jonathan Hickman book. I did review House of X, Powers of 10 on my channel already, if you're interested in that. That kicked off the Dawn of X, X-Men era, which I'm currently still reading. I'm somewhere in X of Swords. I am enjoying it, but between that and then reading these collections, I'm noticing some Hickman-isms that I'm excited to talk about. But all really great stuff, guys, and I can't wait to go ahead and talk about Fantastic Four today. Okay, and to dive into the Fantastic Four Omnibus by Jonathan Hickman, Volume 1, we just kick off right in the middle of the Dark Reign era. This is where Norman Osborn kind of takes over for all intents and purposes. We get this great little mini-series, I guess you would consider it, where it's kind of the Fantastic Four versus Norman Osborn. primarily featuring some of the fantastic kids, Valeria and Franklin. It was a really fun story that kind of launches this book, but in many ways, I think it feels a bit like a prologue. I can tell that that's not like the major beginning to his run. After the Dark Reign stuff, we really feel the beginning, the true beginning of what I consider the Hickman main story for Fantastic Four, which picks up when Reed tries to solve everything. A few things to note about these collections. I've heard it said, and I've seen it, as I mentioned with some of the Dawn of X era stuff. Jonathan Hickman, when he gets to map out his collections, I don't know if this is his choice or not, but a lot of his collected editions have the cover art for the issues at the back of the collections, meaning that the issues run end to end. Sometimes you have kind of interstitial little filler pages, but you don't have the covers of the individual issues punctuated throughout the volumes. What we have instead are almost like bookmark or chapter break kind of pages that are still really neat. They'll have the title of what the collected edition was called sometimes, or the story arc, and there'll be some nice art, sometimes some quotations, but we really don't get the true covers of the issues or some of the variants until the end of the books. I know some people like that. They feel like it keeps them from being interrupted as they read. Personally, I love to see when the covers are where they should be within the collection. So that is something to note if you're like me and enjoy that. Like I said, doesn't really take away. We still have a beautifully curated set of volumes here. I was never lost. The mapping was great. Like I said, the breaks between the chapters still really helped to give me a sense of place. But I would have liked to see those covers where they should be. But that's all right. As far as the plotting goes, the main meat of the storyline kind of kicks off with this idea that Reed Richards thinks that because he's so smart and because he has all of these opportunities afforded to him, he's really responsible for what he does with his powers, with his knowledge, with his work. And he kind of wants to find a holistic approach to solve everything, to solve every major problem, and basically look at the future, and if there's any kind of extinction event or issues that we're running towards, how can I solve it before we get there? How can I have a future that's insured? How can we have a brighter tomorrow? What can I do? From that place, he ends up making this bridge, kind of portal, almost Stargate-like device that connects him to different areas within kind of the multiverse. He stumbles across the Council of Reeds, which are exactly what they sound like. It's a group of all of these brilliant multiversal Reed Richards who had the exact same thought and can bridge together to this one shared kind of forum team squad that it's all of these different Reed Richards. There's ones with Infinity Gauntlets. There's one that's like from a Hitler universe. It's crazy. There's all sorts of different Reed Richards, and they band together to solve gigantic multiversal problems. Ultimately, our universe's Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, chooses to kind of bow out for the sake of his family, but this really sets the stage for the larger narrative that Jonathan Hickman tries to unfold across these volumes, which really do have to do with some of these other Reeds, but even more than that, these big universal or multiversal problems that throughout all time, space, everywhere, these things that'll be like future ruining, and how can we solve them? There are so many individual plot threads and subplot threads that all weave together beautifully into this giant over-narrative that is Hickman's story for this Fantastic Four run. I won't go through the effort of explaining all of them. I'm sure there's other videos that can do that. What I really want to communicate is what this run does so well, maybe better than any other Fantastic Four run I've ever read. I think first and foremost to me, it really captures that high science fiction, fantastical, adventure every month kind of aspect that I really think makes this title shine and has always made it shine, coupled with the character drama, family dynamic, fun in the characterizations. I think those twin elements make this really pack a punch. You couple that with Hickman's ability to really storytell very high level and dense, huge in scope, master narratives, and you really have what makes this shine. With that, I really feel like this touches upon like kind of the greatest hits of Fantastic Four too. We have interwoven throughout this whole thing. We have stuff with Black Panther and the Inhumans and Galactus and Celestials and the Negative Zone, and the list just goes on and on. It feels like a greatest hits. I also feel more than I've seen in the past, this also elevates Doctor Doom to, if not an ally, at least kind of a not wholly adversarial figure in the lives of the Fantastic Four. I really also like the relationship between Doctor Dooms and Valeria Richards, Reed and Sue's daughter. That's really kind of a special treat in this as well. You can see here what I talked about earlier, the cover art gallery with all the issues and some of the variant covers here at the back. We've made our way through Volume 1. I'll start doing the Volume 2 right after this. You'll get to see. As I said, this is kind of a flyby review, overview of this run, these editions, and I cannot say enough good things about this run. It's really fantastic. You see what I did there? Fantastic. Anywho, as I mentioned, that's Volume 1. We'll go ahead and kick off into Volume 2 next. I will say for me, there was about a wait of, a month or two between these volumes, and I couldn't wait. Volume 1, toward the end of it, really was, I would say, end of Act 2 of the master Jonathan Hickman storyline, and I was chomping at the bit to see how he'd resolve the major plot lines, all the minor plot lines in it. If you couldn't see as well, in Volume 1, we had the death of the Human Torch, which, you can't have the Fantastic Four without the Human Torch. That just seems wrong. And what was going to happen? I knew he was going to return, but how are they going to do it? How is this all going to take place? What is Spider-Man doing here? These are all questions I had going into Volume 2, and I couldn't wait to see how he just wrapped it all up. Another development that happened, right around the midpoint of this run was the introduction of the FF series, which stands for the Future Foundation. And now this isn't just the Fantastic Four minus Human Torch plus Spider-Man, as I actually assumed it was initially. The Future Foundation are, all the Fantastic Four plus all of these, I'm going to call them the Fantastic Kids, and not all of them are related to Sue and Reed. But it's this collection of young, kind of brilliant, these are the hope of the future, kind of brilliant, smart kids in the world. They form this foundation. It's almost like a school, work-study, super heroic kind of team. And, it's like the Fantastic Four babies, and it just works, and you get that kind of interwoven between that and the main Fantastic Four title. And while it had to grow on me a little bit, I wasn't initially super eager at the idea of this series following kind of these secondary kind of kid characters, but it really meshed well with the over-narrative that Hickman was doing. It really grew on me, and it really feeds into the larger thematic thing in this, which is a brighter tomorrow, the future. The children are our future. What are we doing to set up the future for success? And we get to see more and more of that play out. We get to see the role of the Future Foundation and the role of the Fantastic Four and how those weave together to save the future, to stop this kind of negative, universe-ending kind of, bleak version of the future, to kind of have a free and bright and limitless tomorrow. Of course, we also get to see the return of Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. We get to see how he died and was kind of resurrected in the Negative Zone, and how he ultimately kind of rose through the ranks of, kind of a gladiator game situation, and ultimately took over and kind of became king of the Negative Zone, and having literally Annihilus on a chain like a dog, which, again, there's so much more to it. There's some great characters, some great stuff happening there. But, he returns just in time to help save the day with everyone else. We get some great Avengers cameos in some of these issues. And like I said, this run is just amazing. How it interweaves all of these plot lines in such a satisfactory way to solve multiversal level threats. We have things like the Celestials. We have things like the Kree and the Inhumans, and the scope could not be bigger. The enemies could not be larger. The threats could not be more consequential. And yet it's done with such tact and in a way that really pays off. I will say, reading both of these volumes, there were times that seemed like they dragged for me a little bit. As I said, the beginning of the FF with all these children, I wasn't immediately thrilled by that concept. But they really grew on me, and everything really grows together. I can't say that enough. Hickman really does such a great job at kind of seeding all of these ideas and plot lines and characters and moments to really get us just to such a satisfactory payoff. And we see that here. One thing I will say about this collection too that was kind of interesting was I felt like the meat of the storyline, in the same way that Volume 1 began with the Dark Reign, that in the whole of it all didn't really feel super connected to the main story Hickman wanted to say. I feel like Volume 2 had kind of the same feeling, where there was a good portion of Volume 2 that felt like an epilogue. Like, you can definitively tell when the main storyline he's trying to do kind of crescendos and then finally reaches its climactic conclusion, and then everything else is kind of like aftermatter. There's a lot of great one-shots, a lot of cool little minor stories to kind of tell and wrap up, but there was this feeling that the momentum I got going from Volume 1 into Volume 2 carried me through that main story, and then I realized when it was kind of wrapped up, wow, there's still a lot of this book left. And like I said, they were able to tease out more. We got more of an epilogue, more wrap-ups, but you definitely don't hit the pinnacle of this run at the very end of Volume 2. I would say that happens maybe in the middle of Volume 2. And yeah, guys, we're getting toward the end of the collection. I'm going to show you kind of the rest of this. We'll get to the cover gallery in a second. But I just want to say, I loved it. I feel like this absolutely lived up to the hype I had heard about Fantastic Four. I will say that even though I may be more of a fan of the X-Men, I think I prefer Hickman's Fantastic Four to what I've read in X-Men so far, even though it's been great. As a frame of reference for you all as well, I am by no means a Fantastic Four expert. I've read a bulk of the original Stan Lee, Jack Kirby run, which is just... yeah, it's the tops. It's the tops. I get why that series was so long running, knowing what the foundation of that series was. After that, I've read a bit of the John Byrne run, which I also liked. I've read some from Mark Millar, from Mark Waid, that Grant Morrison Fantastic Four 1, 2, 3, 4, which I also reviewed on this channel. And kind of a smattering of bits and pieces, from other runs throughout. But that was really it. This was one of the few really modern runs I had read, but it's up there. It's easily one of the best runs I've ever seen. As I said, I really think that we get a lot of great character interactions, a lot of great sense of family, and just some great, just high fantasy, science fiction-y adventure with some great narrative. I do think one drawback I'd have from his run on the whole was I think I would have loved to see a little more balance. What I mean by that is I feel like this run really spent a lot of time on Mr. Fantastic, the Human Torch, and Franklin and Valeria Richards. I feel like the Thing and the Invisible Woman were a bit underutilized. I would have loved to see more arcs that kind of teased them out. It would have been cool, my sense of balance, I guess. It would have been great to feel like everyone got a really great character arc. But I don't know that every single character in the Fantastic Four did throughout the run. And that's okay. What we did get was great, but I think that was one drawback I didn't expect. And now I think it's time to give The Fantastic Four by Jonathan Hickman Omnibus Volume 1 and 2 a grade. For its incredible narrative arc, strong use of characters, and really just getting what makes this series shine, I have to give Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four an A. This is an absolutely must recommend from me. Even if you don't love these characters, this might still be a run for you to pick up. It was great art throughout, great storytelling. If you can be patient with it, there is good payoff. And if history is any indication, get these bad boys while they're still in print, because they might go up. That's going to do it today for the Comic Book Report. Please go ahead and give me a comment, a like, or check out some of my other videos. It's good to be back.